Backyard Green Films is proud to present this episode of Agri-Culture with your host, Alara Bowman. Alara and her husband Rick travel throughout the land in their teardrop trailer that they have nicknamed Maggie, bringing you stories about their travels and the people they meet. They visit farmers, ranchers, and just about anyone who loves putting their hands in the dirt or their feet in stirrups. For the past 3 years, they have been filming a documentary about heritage breed animals entitled The Holstein Dilemma, Heritage Breeds, and the Need for Biodiversity. In those travels, they have gotten to meet some very interesting people. Here's one of those interviews.
Hi, this is Alara, and welcome back to our podcast. We mentioned in one of our previous podcasts that the National Western Stock Show is coming around again. This grand event has been a Denver tradition since 1906, and it's held at the National Western Complex every January. Well, mostly at the National Western Complex. The whole shebang gets kicked off with a parade down the streets of downtown Denver, and it starts at Union Station. For 15 blocks, people line the streets to watch cowboys and cowgirls on horseback, horse-pulled wagons, rodeo queens from all over the country, 6-hitch draft teams, a law enforcement color guard, classic and modern tractors, old fire trucks, a Wells Fargo coach, beer barrel trucks, alpacas, donkeys, and more of all of the above. I have to say that watching really old tractors popping wheelies and doing donuts in the middle of a Denver street is a sight not to be missed. And it's not all that kind of thing where you know that the people in the parade haven't ever set foot in a barn. There are working ranch hands there with the rest of them, the shiny and the working people all in the mix. And it's a good thing the working cowboys are there, because in true Denver style, they had to be just a little rebellious and a little bit bigger than life for their parade. They start the whole procession with a herd of about 30 Longhorns and move them right down the street with the rest of them, with just about as many cowboys keeping close tabs on every hoof and where it's moving or looks like it might want to be moving. Talk about a stressful job. We actually had dinner with the Longhorn Association while we were there, and the gentleman who supplies the Longhorn herd for the parade sat next to us. He said that one year they had to stop the parade to let traffic go by at the big turn. Then they had to stop the herd for a minute, and it got a little dicey. Ha! That's the parade, and it's really an exciting one. I recommend it highly for kids and adults alike. But the rest of the show is great too, and it has about 3 weeks of events to choose from, including a pro rodeo competition, team pulling and draft hitch meets, auctions, equestrian show jumping, kids petting areas, auctions for cattle and horses and sheep and everything else on 4 feet, and tons of other things to see. There's mutton busting, bronc riding, bull riding, calf roping, barrel racing, and sheepdog trials. Or you can just walk around the barns and stockyards to check out the livestock. On our podcast next week, we'll be bringing you more information about the National Western itself. It has a long history, and like many things that grew out of the Wild West, or Colorado in general, it's full of amazing stories. Some are proper, and some are pretty wild. There were a few drunken parties that hit the newspapers across the country, especially early on in its history. Everyone who was anyone in the West was usually there, rubbing shoulders with those in dusty boots and chaps. This includes my dad, who used to tell us stories over the kitchen table of his adventures in ranching in the 1950s and 60s. He went all over the West looking for genetic stock for his beef cattle operation, and the National Western was included in our dinner conversation more than once. Makes me smile just thinking about how life comes around sometimes. So last January, we went twice to the National Western Stock Show. The first time was to take my niece and nephews to see the Longhorn Parade and to have tea at the Brown Palace. That's a tradition we'll tell you about soon. The second time we went to Denver was to talk shop with the people you'll hear today. You may have heard excerpts from these interviews in a couple of previous podcasts, but in listening today, we hope you get an idea of how it was to walk around the show and speak to all of these different people in one place. It's kind of like a visit to Epcot's World Showcase, but with livestock. And we really hope you try a visit for yourself one day. We'll start you off on the main street of downtown Denver, just outside of the train station, with the beginning of the Longhorn Parade. In the big arena at the National Western Complex, there's pretty much some sort of event going on all the time. The one we'll share with you here is Val Barnica driving her Suffolk Punch team in a timed competition to pull hay on and off of platforms around an obstacle course.
Pretty simple. We're going to bring two horses and or mules. We're going to start one on either side. You're going to go down the side, pick up hay. Take it down the side, around the cones. You'll see how it works very quickly. Put the feet back on these pallets. The bales of hay must be on the pallet. They cannot hang out on either side. It'll be a penalty if they disturb an obstacle, and it will be a penalty if the bale of hay is not on the pallet. And given the price of hay nowadays, if they break a bale, there is a significant penalty. This is entry number 665. Jeff Sparks will be on the left side, and Val Barnica on the right with those Suffolk punches. Jeff Sparks is rocking right along here with that first round team. He's tough to beat, these Sparks. And Val Barnica just crossed the line. Nice pair of Suffolks. The Suffolk Punch. We don't get them here a lot, but they brought about 4 or 5 head. And it was so nice to see them here.
We loved being able to see these rare horses in motion in the arena, doing what they were bred to do. So afterward, we ran to the barn and found Ken and Val working on unhitching the team. Ken was kind enough to spare a few minutes to tell us about the Suffolk Punches and what they do at Y-Bar.
Hi, I'm Ken Spann. I'm with the Y-Bar Hitch, headquartered at Montrose, Colorado. And these are Suffolk Punch draft horses, and they're extremely rare. There's about 900 of them in all of North America. This is Eagle Ridge Rose. She's one of our foundation mares. She's 5 years old, and she has most of the characteristics of a true Suffolk Punch draft horse. Suffolk Punches were developed in England. They're very rare. They were primarily used for farming. They weren't used as war horses. And during the 1000, 1100, 1200, 1300s, they were used primarily for farming in Suffolk and Norfolk counties in England. They almost went completely extinct following World War II. The numbers got down very, very small. In 2015 and 2016, there were about 52 of these horses foaled in North America. We're really fortunate to have the 7 mares. We've put them together over the course of the last half a dozen years, and we actually have 3 live weanling foals at home in western Colorado. Rose is very typical of the breed, but she's also one of the outstanding foundation mares. She was 4th in the main mare class at the National Western Stock Show in Denver. We're very, very proud of her. And as you can see, she has the typical Suffolk Punch disposition. She's very gentle, very forgiving, very loving, but she has great mass, great structure, a lot of power in her legs and in her hindquarters that will pull a wagon, pull a carriage, or as they were developed, pull a plow. And they were developed to do that. And we're just thrilled to have her with us and be able to represent the Suffolk Punch breed as one of the rare breeds. We're encouraged. There's a lot of people that are getting more interested in taking care of these horses and bringing them back. There's a young cadre of breeders across North America that are working together to try and reestablish these horses, but we have lots of opportunity to move this breed forward, and we're just tickled to death to have this opportunity. So.
Then the rodeo starts. Of course, every rodeo begins with the national anthem, and this year it was brought to us by Melissa Clarity Reed.
Bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streamed, and the rockets rang there, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Melissa Clarity Reed, ladies and gentlemen.
And the Bronx were next.
And won 9 out of the 20 rounds. There are guys that have been there 10 times, never won one. Big time bucket horse. His brother Rusty had this horse in Florida and won a check. That's a little fucker right there named Painted Bear. And that, my friends, is the reigning world champion saddle bronc rider. He's a cowboy that won over 185,000 on his way to his first world championship. So, stroke, it looks like we'll go to Littleton for our first button buster. Ethan Wolf, 6 years old. Ethan, you the man? You the man? How about 86 points for the first ride of the race?
Now, we'll share with you one of my favorite parts of the whole show, the bagpipes. This could be my favorite part of practically anything, actually. If you've never heard bagpipes in person, I'll tell you now that it's one of the absolute coolest things ever. When you combine that with one of the biggest stock shows in the country, a barn full of Scottish Highland cattle, a pretty fast-paced auction, and traditional Scottish dancers and drums, it's pretty exciting. And in the barns, we met Eddie McKay, one of my next favorite moments. I'm pretty sure he's been in America for a while, but from the sound of his beautiful brogue, he came straight out of the Highlands and right into Denver. In actuality, there was a stop there in Three Rivers, Michigan, to start up Dun Old Farm, where he raises Highland cattle. He's a brave and robust man if his clothing choices in chilly January and December Colorado are anything to judge by. Yes, he was wearing a kilt. The stock barns were warmer than the outside with all the hay and the animals about, but not that much warmer. I was impressed. And he talks about the math and science of a good steak, among other things. Considering the history of Scotland and the world ranking of the University of Edinburgh, I guess the math part shouldn't be surprising to any of us. And we asked him about the differences between livestock practices in Europe and the U.S.
I'm Eddie Mackay. I own the Donald Highlands and I'm a member of the American Highland Cattle Association and also the Midwest Highland Cattle Association. The biggest Highland bull I had was 2,200. Most of the Highland bulls typically 1,800, 1,900. I had a lot of Highland cows around 15, 16, but I like the smaller cow. Now most of my Highlands are about 1,200 pounds. I found I can get the same productivity out of a 1,200 pound that I got out of a 1,400 pound.
Same amount of meat.
No, the same calves, the brood cows. And I'll still like the big bull, but I like the smaller cow, take less maintenance. But through the years, like many breeds, the Highlands have been big, they've been small, they've been all over the place because they've been around for so long. This country went to big livestock back about 30 years ago. Bigger was better. Actually, it started in the late 60s. Everybody wanted the bigger carcass. Bigger. Today, that is changing drastically. They don't like the big carcass anymore because so many restaurants sell the cuts by a certain pound, and if they're really big, then they have to cut them too thin. So the big carcass has gone away, where they're back to a much more moderate size.
So it's the market, it's the restaurant market that's driving the size down?
The restaurant market is driving the carcass size down.
That is interesting.
Because you realize if you're going in and you're going to order a ribeye and you want it at least an inch thick to be, and of course if it's a ribeye and it's from a great big carcass, they have to cut it because they serve portions by weight. So a lot of processors cut the meat strictly for restaurants, and it's all done by weight.
Okay, so explain to me, or to the average layperson, why you couldn't just take a steer and not let it grow so big and have the same size ribeye versus the full size?
Because when you grade an animal, you cut between the 12th and the 13th rib. And that's how they grade them. Over there, they will do that on ultrasound.
Okay.
So this is a ribeye, and if you notice here, this is what they call IMF, intramuscular fat. Why?
Is that same thing as
Marbling. We call it marbling. They call it IMF.
Yep.
So when this is ribeye area, IMF, and back fat.
Okay.
Okay, so while they're in the growth period, there'll be no intramuscular fat. You have to actually overfeed an animal before the fat comes in here. While the growth, this is red. There's no marbling, so you don't get the marbling, and you don't get the flavor.
Yes.
And then the back fat, this was a 5/8 Highland. This was a Highland cross bred back with a Highland. And the Highland has a larger ribeye area. Typical beef animal have 1 square inch per 100 pounds of body weight. You see this weighed 1320, had a ribeye of 16.1. And if that was an Angus or a Hereford or a Simmental or a Limousin, a typical beef breed, if that was there's three, you're familiar with the grading of beef, there's select, choice, and prime. Select being the low cut, choice is what everybody wants. The big factories don't want prime because there's too much waste, it costs too much. So typically, there's select, choice is what everybody wants. And what they've done with the choice is they've got choice, and they've got choice minus and choice plus.
Okay.
If an animal was to grade choice, you have to have a certain amount of marbling to grade it.
Yes.
If that was another beef breed, typical beef animal grading choice would have 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch of back fat, which has to be trimmed off. The Highland, because the Highland has a heavy hide and heavy hair, it doesn't build back fat. The other animals build back fat for insulation.
Yes.
The Highland, you see, that only had 3/10 of an inch of back fat.
Okay.
So that's what makes, now if you cross the Highland with another beef breed, the ribeye area, that's a highly heritable trait. So the Highland cross gets that feature from the Highland.
So it will retain the lack of back
Fat, yes,
and yet marble nicely.
yes.
Okay, so the Lidos, we went to the Lidos.
They're-
and he
they're-
cooked
they're
a
u-
Delmonico steak for me that I have to
And
admit
he
was the best
is
I've ever had.
using Highland cross.
Yes.
And he's using mostly Angus cross because you can get the semen cheap. I have done Simmenthal, Hereford, Red Angus, Black Angus, Shorthorn. I've done them all. It doesn't matter what I do with the Highland, it turns out good.
Okay, so you can cross any one of those beef cattle and it will do the same thing if you cross
Yes.
the same proportion.
Now the Highland has a slower growth animal. The Highland, it takes me, if I were to take a purebred Highland steer, before I could get it finished, we call it finished with marbling, and we can judge when an animal's finished. Before I could get it finished, it would have to be 24 to 25 months of age. And a Highland cross, in the same identical environment, same pasture, I finished the Highland cross in 18 months.
Oh, yeah.
So from a commercial standpoint, that's 1 winter versus 2 winters.
Of feeding hay.
Yes.
Ah,
So that's why the cross, the purebred, in the United Kingdom, most of the commercial breeders use Highland cross cows, a Highland Shorthorn cross and a Shorthorn bull, Highland Simmenthal cross and Simmenthal bull. They use a Highland cross cow because they like the maternal instinct of the Highland cow. The Highland is very much a maternal breed, and ease of calving,
okay.
and great mothering instincts.
Okay.
So that's a great characteristics.
It might catch the attention of the large size of the steer here and the size of the small girl leading him around. She's doing a pretty good job until I interrupted the flow. I swore she
Then we went behind the arena to the historic stockyard area. Cattle and other animals have been bought, sold, and loaded into rail cars to be sent back east to feed the populated cities there since the 1800s, in just this spot. And looking over the wooden pens, it's kind of like stepping back in time a little. While we were there in the pens, we met up with Steve and Anita Hill. The International IYAK Association was having their meeting in Denver last year, so it was a rather vibrant get-together of happy people that afternoon. Steve and Anita were there to meet up with their fellow members to, well, IYAK.
I'm Steve Hill,
I'm Anita Hill.
and we're yak farmers.
So tell me about your farm.
Our farm is Sunny Hill Ranch. We're on Montana Creek, Alaska. We are 100 miles from Anchorage.
And we're 65 miles from the way the crow flies from Denali. So we can see Denali out our front property.
And we are members of the Heritage Livestock Conservancy, as well as the International IYAK Association.
I guess what's unique about us, or it may not be unique, but we live off grid. So we're not connected to a power company or a telephone company or a water company. And so we live off of solar power and generator. We do have a water well, and we heat our house with wood, and I cook on a wood cook stove, and I grow my own vegetables and I can them, and our kids and grandkids live up there on the farm with us, and they're doing the same thing and learning how to do that. So we're passing it on to the next generation.
Wonderful. Well, that's a fair ways up. Tell me about the climate in Alaska.
Alaska, we have a good portion of our year is winter, usually from October till late April. We have snow on the ground, and then we have a very quick growing season, lots of sunshine and daylight hours in the summertime. Pretty much it's light for 24 hours a day. The sun just goes below the horizon for an hour or so at the solstice, and so things grow fast. We grow lots of grass, and yaks take care of it for us. They mow it.
Wow. So are they mowers or are they tearers? That's my understanding. You're either one or the other. You pull or you mow.
They pull. Yeah, but not destructively.
Right. Okay. So did you raise other animals before you chose yaks?
No, this is kind of a retirement project for us.
So why yaks?
Well, I saw one up at Chena Hot Springs, north of Fairbanks, and saw one across the field, and I stopped the car, got out, and looked at it, and I said, what in the world is that? And so I did some research and found out it was a yak, and very well suited to the climate in Alaska. They handle the cold very well, thrive in it. And they're a multi-purpose animal for us. Meat production, very lean meat, fiber, yarn, many different felted products can be made from it. They can also be a beast of burden, pull a plow if they're trained for it, and you can ride them.
Do you milk yaks?
I have, yes. If they've given up their baby, or if like when our breeding, we didn't have a breeding season established. We had one that was born at 9 below, and the mom couldn't take care of it. She gave it up, and so I milked them to get the colostrum. But I don't milk them for milk, but I do for babies.
So your husband comes home one day and says, let's get yaks? So is that how it went, and how did that go over?
Well, we both, before we even met, knew that we wanted to have 100 acres somewhere, and have a farm life. We couldn't find 100 acres, so we bought 320. I was all ready. I wasn't born on a farm, but I got there as fast as I could. So, yeah, I had never I'd seen the yaks when we'd gone to Chena Hot Springs. And he started researching a good animal. They're easy on fences, they're quiet, and they're not smelly, they're easy keepers, very efficient with their food conversion, and each one of them have a different personality. So we have a lot of fun with them.
That's one thing we noticed in the ring while we were there, that boy, they are animals laden with personality.
Yes.
Tell me about the personality of a yak.
We have an old grandma, she's 20 years old. Her name is Sarah, and she's not a bottle baby. Bottle babies are very friendly, and that's what we started out with. Grandma is just old yak, and you couldn't ask for a sweeter one. And she'll just walk with you. You can mess with her babies and pick her baby up and go if you need to get her somewhere. We have the babies, they like to run and play, and they're into everything. They're curious like a cat. The steers are... We have 2 steers that we use as babysitters when we wean the babies off of the mamas. We put the steers in there so they'll have adult supervision, and they protect the babies. The butcher bulls that we have there, we try to keep them all tame so they'll scratch, and they're playful, but they're pretty lazy in the wintertime. And the bulls are bulls, they're not. They just kind of do what they do. In wintertime, they lay around and be lazy. In the summertime, they want to visit their girls.
So who runs the show, the males or the females?
Depends on which pasture you're in. We keep the females separate from the males. So there's a pecking order. And so the biggest female yak is our alpha female. The bulls, of course, they are in their line. When the boys and girls are together, then the bulls call the shots.
Did you ever ranch with cattle before you did this?
No.
This is a whole different ball game, and just everything's brand new to you.
Yep.
I've worked with animals before, and we'd go visit farms, and we raised pigs and chickens when I was young, and I've messed with horses, but never with, I've had a little experience, but not anything compared to what we have with yaks.
So where did you get them? Did you run down the street?
You don't run down the street anywhere we're at. It takes 5.5 miles to get to the highway. So
We Delta Junction, Alaska, is where we bought our yaks. There's good herd up there. There's 2 or 3 good-sized herds in the state, and so there are some breeding options for us. But International Yak Association has been a wealth of information for us. The Breed Association really provides some good education for us.
I would think that it was something as off the wall as a yak might be to many people, that you definitely, the resources that you can find are critical. So what are the kinds of things that they did that helped you?
Networking with people is probably number one. Every year they have education classes during the last week of the National Western Stock Show, and they can cover everything from halter training to herd health, marketing, just anything to help the small breeder, help them with their business, because that's what this is a business.
We hope you got a feel for what our fantastic visit was like. Our podcast will be back again next week for part 2 of the National Western Stock Show. But today, we'll leave you with the arena announcer to walk us out.
And here we go. CenturyLink can number 1 in the rearview mirror. Texas two-step, Denver style. One more time. Toot the horn. Alabama left. Talk to her. Talk to her. Send her home. In a pursuit of building perfection, J. Dunn Construction gives you a look at yesterday and yesteryear. Days gone by as families migrated from the east side to the west side across the Chisholm and the Oregon Trail. Manifest destiny as the east and west coasts meet in the inside, the outside, the corridors of that Concord stagecoach. J. Dunn Construction brings you a look at a bygone era with true horsepower and 24 thundering hooves, bringing you that coach with an authentic leather boot.
If you liked our podcast, please subscribe. This is how we keep going. And please tell your friends to join us. Please feel free to post any questions or comments that you might have to our social media sites. Our Twitter feed is at Backyard Green Films, spelled BKYRDGREENFILMS. Our Instagram is at Backyard Green Films, BACKYARDGREENFILMS. Our Facebook is Backyard Green Films. Our YouTube URL is youtube.com/backyardgreenfilms.
We want to thank you for listening today, and we'd also like to thank our guest, Ken Spann from Y-Bar Hitch, Eddie McKay from Dundonald Farms, and Steve and Anita Hill from Sunny Hill Ranch. You have been listening to Agri-Culture with your host, Alara Bowman. Please tune in for more upcoming episodes from our travels. I'm Rick Bowman, your behind-the-scenes editor. Until next time. To find out more about the National Western Stock Show, please visit nationalwestern.com. This has been a presentation of Backyard Green Films Productions, all rights reserved, copyright 2019.